am compelled by Schlock.
Well, feed my Schlockenstein. I am Darby, Ellis, Lewis, Wilson, and joining me as always is Chris Anonymous, and we are your hosts for tonight's show, where we are talking about the titular Jesse James meets Frankenstein's daughter. Chris, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. Rarely do we see such a mashup. Killers clash, they say.
Killers clash. This is.
Did they deliver? We'll find out.
Yeah.
So, we're a weekly podcast video show where we talk about the good, the bad, and the schlock of just weird movies. We usually talk about stuff that we can find on Tubi, on the Tubi app, because it is generally free. It's always free on there with ads. So this week we picked, as I said, Jesse James meets Frankenstein's daughter. This movie was made in 1966. I don't know. Is that like the considered the golden age of movies, or is that like earlier?
Earlier. Yeah.
Earlier, like the 50s, 40s,
30s, 40s. Yeah.
And so 60s is not the golden age. Yeah. And it shows. So let's see. Yeah, there's really not a lot of info on this movie, in that, like, usually I say, like, here's how much it cost, here's how much it made. I'm guessing it didn't cost much to make, and I'm guessing it didn't make a lot in return.
Yeah.
So real quick, sorry, before we get into it, I should tell you that we spoil everything. We spoil.
You're telling me that we spoil everything?
I'm telling you, we're going to talk about the end of this movie.
Oh man.
So, oh wait, you have seen it.
Yeah. So with you.
But here's something you may not have known when we were talking about it before the show. I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to spill the beans in case you didn't know this. So this movie, it was actually a double feature.
Billy the Kid versus Dracula.
Oh, you knew already.
Right? But if it would have been on Tubi, I would have picked it for next week, but it's not on Tubi.
Well, I think it's definitely something we should add to the list, because what I was hoping for in this movie was gunslinging. Well, this picture here, I wanted to see this man shoot this potentially vampire woman.
Yeah, you mean
that's not what happened.
Granddaughter? Or daughter?
Another misnomer. So some interesting things about this. The lab equipment that we see in this movie is actually the original lab equipment from Universal's Frankenstein, and it was also in Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein. So, and I think this is like the only time it's been filmed in color,
which is awesome.
And the movie itself was shot in about 8 days, which I absolutely believe. Yeah. So I'm already spoiling some big things I want to talk about. So before we get into it, let's do the Web of Schlock. Let's see, who are these people? Who made this? Where's it all connected?
Well, it's connected and unconnected in strange ways. So the actors, the guy who plays Jesse James, a lot of TV through decades, but nothing really else. This is one of his few starring roles. The woman who played Frankenstein's daughter, this was her last film. She just must have stopped acting after this, because she lived until the 90s, like mid 90s, but yeah, nothing after this.
She thought she'd never top Frankenstein's daughter.
Right.
Maria Frankenstein.
The guy who played Hank, he had several film roles, but this was like one of his last things he did, and then he retired from acting in the into the 60s. Yeah, and then the one who plays Juanita, tragically, she died the same year this came out.
Estelita
Yeah,
Rodriguez.
Yeah. She was like in her mid 30s, and
Yeah,
there's like some mysterious thing around her death that was super sad. But then you have like the guy who played the sheriff, Jim Davis. He went on to star as Jock Ewing in Dallas for a decade plus. Like, there you go.
I've never seen Dallas,
but you're aware of it. You know what I mean? Like it feels like
everyone's aware of Dallas,
right? And he's one of the main guys. So now the writer didn't write a whole lot. Directed a little bit of things. His name was Carl Hittleman, but he did write Billy the Kid versus Dracula, which was also directed by the director William Beaudine. Now this is where William Beaudine. This dude is schlock royalty, not because he made any classic schlock that we're aware of, but because what year do you think he made his first movie?
What year did World War II end?
What mid 40s, wasn't it?
1945.
Yeah. Earlier.
Somewhere around there. Oh, wow. Pre-World War II.
Yeah.
1930s.
Earlier.
1920s?
Earlier.
Shut up. They didn't have TV back then.
His first film. He did short films. His first one was 1915.
Wow.
His last one
was
1976. You know how many credits he has as a director?
Thousands?
Over 400.
All right. Yeah, I believe that.
That's short films, TV, and movies. Yeah, he was known for a lot of in-camera editing, a lot of like one take and we're done, like just under budget, really fast. I mean, he's just a workhorse. He would just crank these out.
I believe it.
Yeah, and I mean, in like so many different genres. There are westerns, there are horror movies, there are noirs, there are thrillers, there are like romances, there are like just about any kind of genre. He also directed like 70 some episodes of Lassie. So, like that dude is awesome. I mean, just cranking films out for like what, 6 decades?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite the career, man.
Yep.
So we're going to try something a little bit different here with the good, the bad, and the schlock, because it seems like the schlock is the more interesting part for us and for everybody else. But I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't say like what's good about a movie and what's bad about it. So just going to do some rapid fire here, I think, for good and bad. And so let me read you a little list that I have for good. Heck, I'll just do good, I'll do bad, and then you give me your list of good and bad. And then let's get into the schlock, because there's a lot of schlock in this movie.
Yes, there is.
So first on my list for good is fun sets. And we had talked about this a little bit. But I'll go into my next thing. The characters, the actors, the characters, all of it seems just very melodramatic to me, and I really enjoyed that. The third thing is the love triangle between Jesse James, Maria Frankenstein, and Juanita. I thought it was an interesting take. Right, it's not what I expected coming into this movie, that it would be like a love triangle type
that pushes the plot forward. Yeah.
Right. Did they execute it well? I don't know, but it's something that like that it was different for me, and it really did kind of take me by surprise. So that's my good. My bad is that Miss Frankenstein, her plan, it don't make no sense. she's trying to bring someone back alive, and she figures out how to do that by taking someone who's alive and killing them and then bringing them back alive. Like it's silly. The movie is slow. It's not paced very well. I feel like a lot of scenes could be cut up and put either taken out altogether or moved around. It just took us way too long to get back into the Frankenstein mission, the Frankenstein's castle in this. It's an old like Spanish mission in this. So that's my good and my bad. What do you got for me, Chris?
Very similar. The sets. That's my number one good. They were so campy and big and fun and colorful and still cool. Yeah, the sets. I liked the different groups and the different conflicts and in ways that they were all kind of like making the plot change a little bit. Like, okay, we have this going on, but then this comes in and attacks, and then how's that affect this over here? Now, I don't think they pulled it off very well, but I liked the idea of all these different groups attacking and having different ways of affecting the plot and moving the story forward. Yeah, I also enjoyed the actors. That's about it for good. Bad, too long to set up. I totally agree with you. It's slow. A lot of it could just get cut and you would have had time to like expand on all the good stuff. Too much exposition. A lot of the dialogue is just awful, especially in the beginning where it ties into another thing. A lot of it felt like a stage play, like when it opens and they're like center stage and then Juanita comes out and it's basically they're having this conversation to let the audience know what's going on, which would be fine in a play because that's how you're going to get that information across, right? But there are so many better ways of doing that in the film.
You can't use the camera to go around. Yeah,
correct. So it just felt like they had shot a play on a lot of it, and some of the dialogue with the exposition is just awful. Other than that, that's really all I have for the bad. I mean, everything else is tied up into schlock. This is one of the most schlocky movies we've had on the podcast so far.
Yeah, I'd agree. It all kind of lies in that weird realm of like, here's what makes it good and here's what makes it bad. I mean, like you said with the exposition, I completely forgot about that, and I wanted to hit on that like. Yeah, everything is like, well, if you weren't my brother, I'd kill you. But you already know that you're my brother, right? Like, right, everything's for the audience. But here's the thing, though. I knew exactly what was going on. I was not lost at all in this movie, right? We've talked about it's a high concept, right? And it could have gotten very muddy, and I knew exactly what was happening.
Yeah,
even the stuff I did not understand, I understood.
You understood what was going on. Yeah, I just wish understanding what it was would have been better. Like the problem is anytime. When has a mashup movie worked for you? Because it's so fun to think about, right? It's so like, oh, Jesse James versus a Frankenstein, or Billy the Kid versus Dracula, or Aliens versus Predators, or Freddy versus Jason, right? Like you have a meets or you have a versus or something like that. It just conjures up the best parts of those two separate worlds, right?
Right.
And then how do you live up to that? I think it's just you're almost setting yourself up for failure. Not that they couldn't have tried harder in this one, but like as we were watching it together, we kept talking about all the different fun things, and it'd be cool if they did this or expanded on this or like
right. That wouldn't have cost a whole lot more money, right? Because we were like so for those who haven't watched, like there's a whole setup with the Wild Bunch, and they're going to rob a stagecoach. First, they have to wait for the decoy to go by, and literally like 10 feet behind it is the actual stagecoach they're going to rob. and so they have like a shootout and things like that. And I'm just like, man, get me to the Frankenstein monster. I want to see Jesse James shoot the Frankenstein monster. And so they could have just like cut a lot of that, and there's special effects budgets or whatever, all their squibs or their
right, yeah,
blanks, you know, they could have used in that scene.
Him trying to hook up with what was left of the Wild Bunch has nothing to do with the movie proper, because he's already on the run from the law. So you could have just played up him being on the run from the law. You could have had a posse hunting him down,
right,
slowly picking off his group one by one till it's just him and Hank.
Well, the first scene that we have with Jesse and Hank, where Hank is fighting in the streets, and I actually have a picture of Hank called he's actually buff. I think is what it's called, because I was very impressed that like it's the 1960s and they show a dude that's like actually like defined with muscles.
Right. Usually your strongmen back in those old movies are very like just like
barrel chested.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so anyway, they have this opening scene where Hank is like literally street fighting to make some money for him and Jesse. And it does a setup right there, because there's a conflict between Jesse not getting paid by the guy who put up his best man against Jesse's best man. And we get the setup that Jesse is like the last of the James gang or whatever,
right?
And that he's an outlaw. And from there they could have shown them we already have an antagonist that like doesn't want to pay him the money he deserves, right? And so boom, we don't need to add in this heist gone awry stagecoach thing, because we could have just had the guy that he was fighting go tell the sheriff that Jesse James is around, and then they go and try and get him, shoot Hank, and get him to the Spanish mission. Yeah.
Well, and we're just kind of like armchair rewriting it right now, which is fine. But like, I have a problem with like, part of me likes that they turn Hank into the monster, spoiler alert, but also that raises that moral conundrum of, do you shoot your friend, right? Which is fun to explore. But if someone else would have been the Frankenstein monster, then you really could have had an all-out fight between Frankenstein's monster and Jesse James, right? But the fact that it's his friend who became this, not even a Frankenstein monster, but like a zombie.
Yeah. That's what she was trying to make, were zombies, not Frankenstein monsters.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many things that you could make cooler. Like in the beginning, they're talking about how everyone ran away from this town. So it's basically Juanita and her parents, and her brother had just died at the hands of the Frankenstein brother and sister, who were in real life were 27 years apart. And
the Franken siblings.
Yeah, which does not seem like siblings.
We can revisit that, but there was quite the discrepancy in age.
So her little brother dies, right? And then they decide to leave town, and they have already left town. So basically, Frankenstein's siblings have run out everyone from this small village. And now it would be interesting if, they were trying to get money in the beginning, him and Hank doing that fight. What if they don't get the money? What if he calls the sheriff and he's like, okay, we got to get out of town. So they look on a map where it's like, what is the next closest village? So so they plan to go rob this bank or something in this small town, and they get there to go rob the bank, and the town's deserted.
Also interesting,
right?
Anything to get them there,
to so get much them quicker, there that like makes and then you have him. They're desperate. The people are chasing him. Maybe Juanita hasn't left yet. He asks what's going on. There's Frankenstein's castle, Frankenstein's mission. Yeah, there's so many different like ways to get there that would have made it more cohesive and funner. More fun.
Yeah. So talking a little bit more of the schlock, let's get the picture up of the Frankenstein siblings. I think there's a good one that we have that shows the discrepancy in age, which for me, it kind of brings up the whole title of the movie, right? Frankenstein's daughter. And really it's his granddaughter. But then not only is it his granddaughter, it's his grandkids.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're supposed to be brother and sister.
But it's so weird because it feels like an uncle niece relationship in the beginning.
Right.
And then looking at their age discrepancy leads you to believe that. And you don't hear the word brother until like, what, 2/3 of the way into the film?
Yeah. I think they like allude to it. But then
they allude to being relatives, but like not siblings.
Right.
Yeah. So it was weird.
And I just found it odd that like their whole scheme, right? So Rudolph, who is the older brother, like he doesn't like that they are that they're taking Hank and that they're going to turn him into a Franken-zombie. But for some reason, he was okay with them experimenting with the children.
Well, he was against it, but he would like go along with it. But then because he didn't want his sister like messing with the power of God. So he would go take poison and kill them on the table instead of trying to let them be turned into Igors.
Yeah.
So like,
which by the way, in this, the creature is called Igor, not like the assistant.
Right. And she just wants it to do her bidding and be able to die when she says. Like basically she just wants a husband. Which is
right. She really doesn't prescribe to the same ethos that the original Dr. Frankenstein did, right? Like he wanted a cure for death, right? He wanted to save people, right?
Right. And they're taking live people and just trying to zombify them. That's all this is, which is weird and just not as fun as like the Frankenstein.
Well, and we got a picture of the synthetic brain. So
also weird.
So she says that her grandfather created like these synthetic brains.
And there's only like 5 or 6 that they had, and they've wasted them all. And this is the last one. And
then she discovers, the synthetic brain works best putting it like in a healthy live person. So essentially all she did was do a brain transplant, which and then I'm pretty sure is like still science fiction, but like we're not like too terribly far away from that. Like,
right. And she has to zap him back to life because she killed him by doing the brain transplant with a fake brain. But to get her way, all she had to do was lobotomize the dude.
Exactly. Like, or cut off his oxygen for a day or something. So
well, like, and honestly, the character Hank wasn't the brightest Crayola in the box. So she probably just could have seduced him and he would have done all her bidding just as a normal dude. Yeah.
So I don't know. And that's why I say the bad, like the whole plot, I just did not get. And I feel really dumb. So Rudolph is pumping them with poison instead of the digitalis,
which is supposed to resurrect them.
Well, I was like, what's digitalis? What's that do? What's this new mystery thing? Like digital something? No, I looked it up. It's just like heart medicine or something. like it's for people that like go into cardiac arrest, I think.
Right? Yeah, because exactly what's happening here. The sets were very colorful and silly, and if it's the same ones as like the original Frankenstein, it's interesting to see how much like black and white versus color can change like the tone of something. Because when she puts on that little helmet that's like super colorful and looks like some kind of like
Miss Frankenstein's helmet.
Yeah, looks like some kind of like
we got
Willy Wonka type thing.
It looks very official for sure. I read that was a World War II helmet, which makes sense. So some more schlocky stuff. I think when they're getting ready, I think it's when they're doing Hank's brain transfer. there is a dog off screen. I don't have a picture of this because it's never shown. There's a dog.
It knows every time I'm doing the experiment. Oh, go stop that dog.
We've never heard a dog before. We've never heard a dog after. We've never seen a dog.
He walks outside to shut the dog up. We don't cut to him outside. Comes back in. It's all done.
And it's all purely for Juanita to sneak in, I believe.
We need a reason for. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's good stuff.
And speaking of Juanita, her and her family, so I just found it very funny. And this is for the audience. Like they're supposed to be, I don't know, does this take place in Mexico?
Yeah, I don't know, or if it's kind of like in a New Mexico kind of area. I don't know. Yeah. So
it's this Hispanic family in a probably previously Mexican town. And when they're alone, when the family is alone together, they are speaking in perfect English. And then as soon as any white folks come around, they start speaking in Spanish. And they're like, hey, you speak any English? I'm like, oh, a little. And it just cracked me up because one, it's like, well, maybe like a person, like if you didn't trust them, you would say, oh yeah, I don't speak English very good. But it's just so funny that they speak English in private instead of just speaking Spanish.
So the audience can know the exposition, but yeah.
Right.
It's also weird because you have like the thick fake German European accents of the Frankensteins, which kind of falter, and then you have the thick drawl of like actors trying to do a cowboy accent or a southern kind of accent. We should talk about the Wild Bunch because that was pretty schlocky. That actor, man, he pushed all my buttons, man. I was so happy when he got shot. And again, you were talking about the melodrama of it all and like the stereotypes and how they overplayed everything. And it's campy, but it's also effective. Right.
So we're talking about Lonnie, who's I think probably more of an antagonist.
The villain. He's the antagonist of the show.
I mean, he really pushes a lot of things forward. And yeah, you're right. Like I absolutely hated Lonnie. And like that's hard for me to separate like the actor from the acting. If like whenever I see a character that I absolutely hate, I have to remember like, oh, this actor is probably really good because they're playing this character I'm supposed to hate to a T.
Hate him. Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh,
I wanted to slap
stupid
Lonnie
smile.
around.
Oh, I wanted to just knock his teeth out.
Yeah, his no mouth moving talking.
Yeah, with his
he talked like this with a
little overbite smile, his toothy grin.
He never opened his mouth real big.
Well, and again, he was arrogant, he was cocky, and he betrayed everybody.
Backstabber. Yeah. Terrible.
And it just worked. And he was also a drunk, and like it was just
Lonnie's the worst.
Lonnie's the worst. But it's so like broad strokes, right? That it should, like, you're watching like, that's not going to work on me. And then you halfway through, you're like, oh, I hate Lonnie so much.
Want to wring his neck. Yeah.
Right. And
his
again,
little Lonnie neck.
They did that really well. But like, if that were taken out of the movie, we could have actually focused on a conflict between Jesse James and Frankenstein's daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are fastly approaching the end of our time here. Really quick, I want to talk about the very end where Jesse, I believe, turns himself in, right? He rides away with the sheriff. And
to the gallows.
You were telling me that's to the gallows. Yeah, he's going to get hung and potentially set up a sequel where he's a creature. No.
Right. Back in the day,
they did not think of things that way.
Yeah, back in the day, you weren't supposed to show crime paying, right? So anyone who was like an anti-hero had to redeem themselves by the end, or had to get caught, or had to die in a gunfight, or had to get their comeuppance somehow. Like, so the honorable thing, because he loved Juanita, was to turn himself in. But I'm like, it just could have made the movie so much better if he just would have. They kept the sheriff knocked out and him and Juanita right off together because her parents are gone. They never came back. The Frankensteins are gone. Hank's gone. They both love each other. Why would not you not ride off into the sunset?
Yeah, well, that would not come until a later era. But that is all the time that we have. Chris, tell us, what is our movie for next week?
A schlocky masterpiece from the 80s called The Last Dragon.
The Last Dragon. You've been talking about it for weeks. I'm excited to see it. The Last Dragon. So I hope that's in the movie. I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous. We've been compelled by Schlock, and we will see you next week with The Last Dragon. Bye, everybody.
I am compelled by Schlock. Compelled by Schlock. Compelled by Schlock. Wait, no.